Good evening, everybody. Well, it's nice to see a good cross-section of members of Hamakom here this evening, and I want to thank you for being here. And even if you're not a member of Hamakom, I want to thank you even more for coming and joining us this evening for this very important conversation. If you're not a member of Hamakom and you would like to get more information, come and see me. I am happy to talk with you. For those of you who don't know, I am Rabbi Richard Camrus, one of the senior rabbis of this marvelous kihila, this marvelous community that I call home. And I hope you do also. So this is an important evening, and as important as this evening is, even more important is hopefully the outcome of this evening and your participation in what will be an incredibly important election for the World Zionist Congress coming up very soon. And I am not one, typically, to speak negatively about our co-religionists, because I really believe in pluralism. And I believe that every stream of Jewish life has a right to practice their religious faith the way they want to practice their religious faith. But what I don't like is when religious faiths, streams within our religion badmouth and put down others. And there is a very, very nasty video that is going around that was created by one of the Haredi groups in Israel that is lambasting the Reform and conservative movements, saying we are destroying Judaism worldwide and destroying Judaism in Israel. And that makes me very angry, because we are all important and essential to the lifeblood of the Jewish people. And Israel will only be strong or stronger when everybody comes together. And I really believe that there needs to be a balance in life, that we need those on the right, and we need those on the left, and we need those in the center. And ideally, we all want to work together to build a stronger Israel and a stronger world Jewish community. And one of the ways in which we can build a stronger Jewish community is by concentrating on the center. Because the center is what allows the right and the left to hold on to their positions. Therefore, it could be the battery.
Works for me, Rabbi.
Yeah, okay. That is clearly the sign that says stop talking and bring up our speaker. So I hope that you will vote this evening and keep the center strong. And we're going to teach you at the end of Yizhar Hess's talk tonight how to vote. And it's very easy, and you can see the cards on your table. So for those of you who went with me to Israel back in January after the horrific events of October 7th, we had an opportunity to meet with Yizhar at the Sochnut in Yerushalayim. And it was a very informative and very compelling conversation with him. He's the vice chairman of the World Zionist Organization. For those of you who don't know what the World Zionist Organization is, he's going to tell you in a minute. He was elected to that role in 2020 as a representative of Merkaz, which represent the conservative movement worldwide. And before that, between 2007 and 2020, Yizhar served as the executive director of the Masorti movement in Israel, which is part of the worldwide conservative Masorti movement dedicated to a traditional, egalitarian, and pluralistic vision of Israel and Judaism. He is traveling around the United States. He's in Los Angeles for a week. He's here. He's going to be at Sinai Temple, VBS, Beth Am, the smaller synagogues on the other side of the valley. But tonight, he is here with us. So without further ado, Yizhar, thank you so much for being here this evening and sharing with us what you are going to share with us in just a moment.
Toda Rabba. Thank you, Rabbi, for the warm introduction. I do remember your visit to Israel after October 7th, and it is very much appreciated. I'm privileged to be here tonight with you in this special moment. It's 543 days since October 7th. 543 days since October 7th, and in so many ways. And I'm sure that the people who sit here who visited Israel after October 7th, you know that in so many ways Israel is still on that date. We did not arrive October 8th yet. And you feel it in so many ways. When you walk in the streets of Israel, when you enter a hotel or a coffee shop, even on private simchas. The playlist is different, the volume is different. Sometimes, some days it's hard to breathe. And it is a moment that none of us remembers like in Israel. It's the longest war that Israel ever had. 543 days since October 7th. Every day, since that date, every day I thank God for the fact that my son, Achiad, was not in Israel on October 7th. Achiad is 28 years old. He's a student at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. And it was the last week of the summer vacation. And he was on a trekking in Nepal. And he didn't hear anything that Shabbat, not on Motzei Shabbat even, not on Sunday, because he was in a place with no internet. Only on Sunday evening, he reached a hostel where he met a few Israelis, and there then he learned about the atrocities in Israel. And from that moment on, he did whatever he could in order to come back home as soon as possible. So he was walking for a day till he reached the nearest road, then rented a Jeep. In a ridiculous price, by the way. Rented a Jeep for 10 hours on a bumpy road, reached an airport, took a plane to the capital of Nepal, bought a ticket to Israel via Mumbai, India, only to discover that in order to fly via India, you need an Indian visa, which he didn't have. He had to toss this ticket, bought another one, this time via the Emirates, landed in Israel on Thursday morning. We waited for him at the airport, my wife Yael and myself. We took him home, a decent breakfast, a quick shower, and rushed to his unit. He was in Gaza for 8 months. And thank God that Achiad was not in Israel on October 7th. I know my son well. He served in a special unit in the army. I know that on that Shabbat morning, he would have rushed to his unit, would have put his hands on whatever rifle he could. And thank you, Toda Rabba. On whatever rifle he could, and would have gone to the Gaza envelope to save as many civilians, to protect as many villages. According to the statistics of that Shabbat, the majority of soldiers who did what I just described This is the way batteries operate on these mics. Okay. So thank God the Chiad was not in Israel. Unfortunately, this is not the case for so many Israeli families. The longest war that Israel ever had, and we are still in October 7th, October 7, 2023. Now, as much as October 7th was a tragedy, and still is, let's remember that October 6th was not a paradise either. Do you remember October 6th? October 6th, the 10 months prior to October 7th, when we were demonstrating in our streets. Wow, what, scope of demonstrations, demonstrating against our duly elected government. Because many of us felt that the democratic nature of the state of Israel is at risk. Now, the Israeli society was almost torn from the within on those 10 months. So the entire year of 2023, the 10 months prior to October 7th, and then October 7th up until now, it's still 2023. 2023 was supposed to be the year that we were waiting to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the State of Israel. That was supposed to be a celebratory kind of year that we were waiting for 75 years. Boy, what a Yom Huledet present we got. What a birthday present we got for the 75th anniversary of the State of Israel. I'm looking to October 8th, and I'm looking for a way to find comfort, to look for angles, to look for points that I would be able to take things with hope in order to build the Israel of October 8th, when October 8th comes. And I was thinking of it. I'd like, from the second period, meaning from October 7th on, I'd like to remind ourselves the first few months when our government hardly functioned, and it was the Israeli civil society that took over. You saw a sense of voluntarism in every corner. You saw people who weren't drafted to the army simply left their workplace and came to volunteer on this, on that. Like the Israeli spirit was there so vividly in a way that warmed our hearts. We put aside the disputes and we were working towards one goal. It was something that I think that we will be needing when we'll get to October 8th. So that component of the first few months after October 7th is something that brings me a sense of hope, and we do need a sense of hope with 59 hostages still being held in Gaza. So that sense, that spirit of Israel and voluntarism is something that I cherish. From the first period of 2023, from the 10 months prior to October 7th, it wasn't easy. It was a hard 10 months, but with scope of demonstrations that Israel never experienced. In the biggest night of demonstrations, it was Wednesday, one of the Wednesdays, we were in the streets, 700,000 people. It's like 10% of the Jewish population in Israel. It was the night where Minister Gallant was fired for the first time. And it was 700,000 Israelis. It was huge. What was so different on these demonstrations was something that it took a while to pay attention to. It was the emblem of the demonstrations. Do you remember what was it? The Israeli flag, exactly. The Israeli flag. You could have seen tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of flags every time. When you saw the Kaplan Street in Tel Aviv, the Dizengoff Square in Jerusalem, everywhere were Israeli flags. And it was as if authentically people felt that when the soul of the country is at risk, when its democratic nature is at risk, people felt they need to go back to the basics. They need to go back to the very beginning of Zionism, which, the symbol for it is, of course, the blue and white flag. The blue and white flag that was introduced almost identically, the same flag, introduced in the first Zionist Congress. We're talking now about elections to the Zionist Congress. Let's go for a second to the first Zionist Congress, where the flag of the State of Israel, that wasn't a state yet, was firstly introduced. What year was the first Zionist Congress? 1897. 1897. Where was it? Basel, Switzerland, right? Why Basel, by the way? Anyone knows why Basel? From all places, why Basel? Someone was friendly in Basel. Could be. Any more ideas? Interesting. People remember Basel because it's so unique. Basel is not that important. There are nicer and more known places even in Switzerland. Well, actually, Theodor Herzl, he didn't want Basel. Herzl wanted Munich, Germany. Herzl back then was 37 years old, and he was the political correspondent of the Neue Freie Presse, The Neue Freie Presse was the intellectual publication of Europe. He was the political correspondent based in Paris, in a nice flat, columns every week. He knew Europe well. By the way, it was so prestiged, the Neue Freie Presse, that there were people in Europe that on their business card wrote a subscriber of the Neue Freie Presse. This is how prestigious this publication was, and he was the political correspondent. He wanted Munich because Munich was posh and intellectual and cosmopolitan. Munich was the right place to have the conference. He couldn't have it in Munich because, excuse me, Rabbi, because of the rabbis. Because of the rabbis of Munich, all of them, from the Reform to Orthodox, including the beginning of conservative Judaism as well, all of them signed a proclamation that was sent to the municipality of Munich with a demand to ban the option of having this radical convention of Jews who think that the Jewish people should have sovereignty in Palestine. So ridiculous, so dangerous. Not in our backyard, they basically said. Herzl was insulted heavily. He didn't forgive those rabbis. He called them in in his opening remarks for the Congress, he called them Protestrabbiner in German, the rabbis of protest. So he didn't forget them, yet he didn't want to pick that fight, and he set his sights and moved to Basel. And everything started basically in Basel. Now, it's not by coincidence that Basel, the 3 days of the Congress in Basel, became such a pivotal moment in Jewish history. And it's not because Herzl was the first Zionist, because he wasn't. Herzl was not the first Zionist. Zionism began good 15 years before the first Zionist Congress. The first wave of Aliyah to Israel is 1882, so it's 15 years before the Zionist Congress. Herzl did not invent Zionism. What happened there? What happened in the first Zionist Congress, the secret sauce was that Herzl politicized the Zionist idea. He politicized the Zionist movement. He introduced politics, talked about politics internally and externally, and was able to convince the delegates, the 209 delegates that were convened in Basel, was able to convince them that via the tools that politics offer, the idea that he wrote about, the Jewish state, Judenstaat, his publication came out just a year before the Congress, this idea will be implementable. And he wrote on his diary, it would take us 5 years or 50 years, but it will be achieved. It took 51 years. 51 years from the first Zionist Congress, and the idea was achieved. In political terms, in historical terms, it's nothing. In the history of political movements, it's nothing. Okay, 51 years from the first Zionist Congress, and the State of Israel was established. Now, what was it? What was that politics that was so important? Well, it was so important because first and foremost, it was a democracy. The first Zionist Congress, they were all invitees of Herzl. 209 invitees of Herzl who came to Basel. From the second Congress on, you had to be elected. The homework that the delegates received upon concluding the first Zionist Congress, go back home to your cities, to your towns, to your villages. Establish Zionist federations. Have elections. And if you are elected, you are most welcome to come to the second Zionist Congress. If not, tough luck. In order to be a leader, you need to have constituency. Otherwise, whom are you representing? In order to be shliach tzibur, you need to have tzibur, a key element of democracy. The second element of democracy from the first Zionist Congress had to do with women's rights. I'm even more proud of that component. From the second Congress on, women could vote and get elected. When did women got that right here in the US? 1920, 1919, you know, there is debate. In Canada, a few years later. In France, 1945. Who is the last democracy who gave women the right to vote, do you know? Switzerland, indeed, 1972. So we were among the first political movements in the world that allowed women the right to vote. So elections as a key component, and then equal rights for men and women. When you get to understand the first Zionist Congress from that lens, I think that one can say that Zionism and democracy were born for the Jewish people at the same place, at the same time. This is one thing. And secondly, when you understand Zionism from that perspective of the first Zionist Congress, you understand how obvious it was in 1948, in the middle of Milchemet HaAtzmaut, in the middle of the War of Independence, for the leadership of the World Zionist Congress, and back then it was David Ben-Gurion and his colleagues, to convene in Tel Aviv on Friday, May 14th at noon, and to sign the Declaration of Independence, Megillat HaAtzmaut, the sole document that anchors the democratic nature of the state yet to be born. If you take these two dots in history, Basel of August 29th, 1897, and Tel Aviv of May 14, 1948, if you take these two dots in history, you'll see a thick line of democratic values that connects them. I think it should be remembered and it should be taken. From those materials, we need the power to build the Israel of October 8th, when October 8th comes. Now, I'm looking at October 8th anxiously. Of course, I'd like to be there already. It will take us time. We will not get there until answers will be given to the questions that we all have. How come we were so off guard on that Shabbat morning? How come our intelligence services did not supply? According to the security doctrine of the State of Israel, we should have got a warning of 48 hours prior to a war. You know, we didn't get 12 or 6 or 2 hours before. How come all the measurements of security that were there on the border did not function? The one that really struck me, there was a sophisticated radar on the fence that even its name, stands for the hubris that we were caught in. The name of the radar was Ro'eh Yoreh in Hebrew. It sees and it shoots. As if it's like a divine kind of thing. It sees and it shoots all automatically. It took the Hamas 5 minutes to knock it down. It didn't see and didn't shoot. Now, so many aspects to the failure that we had that morning, not to mention the political one, that it's more than the military and the intelligence one, that brought the governments of Israel in the last decade and a half to think that you can buy peace with money. So until these questions are answered, and they need to be answered by a thorough investigation of an independent committee that was not yet set even, we will not get to October 8th, and of course, until we bring back the 59 hostages. But in order to get there, I think that we need to look strategically of what are the pillars, what are the things that we need to see waiting for Israel of October 8th to build the new Israel to be built there. So the first pillar that I'd like to address, I think it's the most obvious one. It's security. We learned that we are not secured enough. We learned that we need to redevelop a security doctrine that would be relevant, and it means that we will need to invest more in the IDF and in our security agencies, in the Shin Bet and in the Mossad. It means probably that the next decade of the State of Israel from an economic point of view would be subject to those huge investments. Even from very practical thing, we need to enlarge the army. We cannot anymore exempt the Haredi population from being drafted to the army. And I'm sure that you see some of it if you follow the Israeli news. We need more manpower and more women power in the army. It means that we need to open old paradigms and to redefine them. So no doubt, the security pillar needs to be there, and it needs to be strong. The second, the second pillar that I'd like to address has to do with something that I'm a little hesitant how to express. I'm picking my words cautiously. I'm going to mention a word that we forgot that exists: peace. We need to find a way to have some kind of process with our neighbors. Now, it seems absurd at this point. What? Talking about peace after October 7th? Are you dreaming here? I'm not sure. I don't know. And I'm certainly think that the paradigms of October 6th would not necessarily be relevant in the reality of October 8th. But I think that we don't have the leisure to let go of the dream, to let go of the aspire to have peace in our region and to have peace with the Palestinians. Not because anything in the last year and a half proved that it's doable, but because this is what we owe ourselves, our children, and our grandchildren. I'm not sure that it would be peace. Maybe it would be only coexistence. I don't know. But I would like to remind ourselves something from recent history. Only 5 years after the Yom Kippur War of 73, only 5 years later, President Anwar Sadat landed in Ben Gurion and came to speak at the Knesset. If you would have asked every Egyptian or every Israeli in 1974, would it be possible that in a few years we'll sign a peace treaty with Egypt? People would have laughed at your face. And here you go, 5 years later. Sometimes tragedies have their own ways to create new realities. I'm not sure how it would look like. I'd like to hope that it would be in our lifetimes. I'm certain that we cannot let go our desire to reach peace. We cannot think that, this is reality. Every 10 years we'll have another vicious cycle of bloodshed. Like this is what we are doomed to have. No. One of the ways and one of the lessons that Herzl taught us, that there is a way to change history. 209 delegates were convened in Basel. The majority of the Jewish people looked at this ridiculous idea of Zionism and wasn't part of it. And here you go. Look how things changed. So I'd like to hope that new leadership, both in Israel and in the Palestinian side, would bring a new concept that all of a sudden will mean something that could be implementable. At least we cannot neglect that hope. So that's the second pillar. The third one is the one that I'm most worried about. I'm a 10th-generation Jerusalemite. I'm a verbrannte Zionist. I speak Hebrew. I even dream in Hebrew. I'm worried about Israel's democracy. We learned in the 10 months prior to October 7th, we learned that our democracy is fragile. We do not have a constitution. We do not have two houses. We do not have enough checks and balances in our system. If a duly elected government that was elected democratically and has a majority in the Knesset, but a very small majority, if a duly elected government with a very small majority could change dramatically the few checks and balances that we have, it means that we are not secured enough, and Israel would not survive as a country if it would not be a democracy. So this is something that I'm worried about. I think that the next government that Israel would have, hopefully sooner than later, I'm not sure when elections will be, but the next government, for sure it would be a more centrist kind of government. Well, that's not hard. A more centrist kind of government, and I hope that it would have the courage to understand that Israel needs to go through another constitutional moment. Another constitutional moment that would anchor some of the things that cannot be changed easily. Because, of course, changes can occur in democracy and should occur if needed. But it has to be with a supermajority, with a royal majority, not with a very small majority. It changes the checks and balances that exist in our fragile democracy. Now, the first pillar and the second pillar are things that we Israelis need to take care of. Okay, we live in Israel, we are Israeli citizens. The third one that has to do with Israel's democracy, on that, you, Jews who live outside of Israel, you have a role too. How many Jews have we in the world today? A little more? A little more? 17. Most demographers today would agree on 17 million Jews in the world. 7 million Jews in Israel. We have 10 million Israelis. 7.5 of them are Jewish. 8 million Jews in North America. Canada and the US together. Although it's a political statement, what I just said now. So I'll take my words back. 8 million Jews in North America. Another 2 million Jews in different parts of the world. The third largest Jewish community is France, with 500,000 Jews. That's all, 17 million Jews. Nothing. It's nothing. It's less than 1/3 of 1% of humanity. It's nothing. And we have one Jewish state, one nation state for the Jewish people. I was raised from day one, from kindergarten, I remember it, that Israel belongs to, first and foremost, to the Israelis, Jews and non-Jews alike, and then to each and every Jew, wherever he or she lives. You are stakeholders. You are, it's yours as much as it's mine, regardless if you want it or do not want it. This is how it was created. And the way to execute this responsibility is basically going to the principles of Theodor Herzl in the First Zionist Congress and to use that platform, the democratic platform that he left us with. In 1948, the ultimate goal of the Zionist movement, the ultimate goal of the World Zionist Congress was achieved. 1948, the State of Israel was established. The ultimate goal of the Congress was achieved. And from that moment on, the platform remained as the parliament of the Jewish people that would allow and allows people from all over, the Jews from all over the world, not only to have a voice when it comes to Israel, but also to have a vote. The Congress is like the parliament of the Jewish people. It's 525 delegates, third coming from Israel. When I vote to the Knesset sends delegates to the Congress based on the makeup of the Knesset. The second third is the US. These are the elections that we are in the midst of, elections that are being run by the American Zionist movement, elections that started just a few days ago on March 10th and will be concluded on May 4th. Elections that every Jew over the age of 18 that pays the Zionist shekel, which is $5 in the US, every country has a different Zionist shekel, but it's like a symbolic sum that you pay, can vote in those elections. And the third third is the rest of the world. Asia, Africa, Europe, Latin America, and Canada. It's part of the rest of the world. This is the Congress, 525 delegates. Now, what does it do, and how come it is so dramatically important, and today more than ever? Well, it's not only because of the deliberations or the resolutions. Yes, we talk there and we deliberate, we vote on resolutions. Some of them are serious and dramatic. But it's mainly due to the assets that we run. We run the assets of the Jewish people, assets that belong to the Jewish people, not to the government of Israel, not to the state of Israel, belong to the Jewish people. Furthermore, it belongs more to you guys than to us Israelis, because 2/3 of the Congress is Jews who live outside of Israel. And those assets are significant. One of them I think you heard more than once about, I hope at least, it's the Jewish Agency. The Jewish Agency, if you I would assume that many of you donate to your local federation. So some of the dollars of the Jewish Federation here goes to the Jewish Agency. The Jewish Agency is a company that was founded in 1929 by Chaim Weizmann. And the Jewish Agency, this is the company that sends shlichim to Ramah Camp and shinshinim to different communities and multiple programs that connect Jews in Israel and Jews outside of Israel. As well as the Jewish Agency, this is the company that on behalf of the Jewish people sends its emissaries to places where Jews are at risk. When the war with Ukraine broke out just 3 years ago, it was the Jewish Agency emissaries who stood on the border and helped the Jews who were chased away from or who ran away from the war zone. Some families needed cash. Some families needed to be flown somewhere, a hotel room, a blanket, a hot meal. Nathan Sharansky wrote about it, that it was the first war, first war in history where it was better to be a Jew in the queue. Because, you know, your family was there waiting for you. A very important company of the Jewish people, the Jewish Agency, with a budget of over $550 million. 50% of the Board of Governors of the Jewish Agency, it's the Congress. It's the way that the delegates are elected according to the different parties and outlooks. By the way, the Jewish Agency is also the sole establishment in Israel that allocates funds to non-Orthodox Judaism, to the Reform movement and to the Masorti conservative movement, which is very, very important. And the opening of Rabbi we'll get to it in a second. So this is one of our assets, an important asset that needs to be remembered. The second one is way more important even than this. It's Keren Kayemet L'Yisrael, JNF, Jewish National Fund. Not to be confused with JNF USA. JNF USA, it's a different company that carries the same name, but it's not connected in any way. JNF Israel, Keren Kayemet L'Yisrael, is the company that Theodor Herzl founded in 1901. You know, the blue box that our Bobbies and Zaidis put. By the way, that blue box is the first crowdfunding campaign in history. Really, and today you can use it even from a marketing point of view. A blue box that would, you know, it was brilliant. Herzl, by the way, he had to invent it due to the fact that he failed on fundraising. or on traditional fundraising. He went to the Rothschild family and wanted them to give what they could, and they sent him to take a hike. He wasn't pleased with them, and he had to invent another tool. That was quite successful. Money was raised. Money was raised in order to purchase land in Palestine. The land in Israel had to be purchased. And today, 17% of the land of Israel, 17% of Israel, belongs to Keren Kayemet L'Yisrael, belongs to JNF, meaning belongs to all of us together. It's one serious real estate, okay, that we have there, 17% of Israel. And that land bears fruit economically, rentals, developments, taxes. The proceeds go back to the budget of Keren Kayemet L'Yisrael, and today, on the board of Keren Kayemet L'Yisrael, our budget annually exceeds $2 billion. A huge amount of money. It's 3 times more in all the campaigns of the Jewish federations in North America. It's the biggest collective pot of money of the Jewish people. The biggest NGO that the Jewish people have. $2 billion a year. And 100% of the Board of Governors of Keren Kayemet L'Yisrael is elected by the Congress according to the makeup of the Congress. Now, as you can imagine, $2 billion you can do wonderful things with, and you can do less of wonderful things with. And what happened to us in the elections of 2020, in the previous elections to the Congress, what happened to us was even a tragedy. I represent Merkaz. Merkaz is, of course, the Masorti conservative slate, number 17. We got, on the elections of 2020, in the US, 15,000 votes. The reform movement did a little better. They received 27 or 28,000 votes. You know who did well? The ultra-Orthodox, the Haredim. They ran a slate for the first time. On 2020, they joined the Zionist movement. We were celebrating it because we thought, okay, history won here. Haredim are joining Herzl's movement. He was the worst enemy for them for many, many years. And Zionism was a curse, but they joined. Well, soon enough we learned, and they didn't even hide it. Rabbi mentioned the video that they published. They didn't even hide it. They joined the Zionist movement in order to chase us away, in order to minimize the power of conservative Judaism and Reform Judaism in the Congress, and in order to prove that there is only one way to be Jewish. And they were successful because they were able to mobilize their voters in a way that stunned us. More than 20,000 voters they were able to bring from 5 neighborhoods in the New York area, and they changed the makeup of the Congress. For the first time since the establishment of the Zionist movement, for the first time since Herzl, the pluralistic side of Zionist thinking became a minority. Not an insignificant minority, but still a minority, while orthodoxy and ultra-orthodoxy, right-wing and ultra-right-wing, became the majority. Now, it made so many things different. Today, on the board of governors of the Jewish Agency, there are Haredi Jews that were elected democratically. And of course, I don't look down on their Judaism in any way. I'm not more legitimate than they are, and vice versa, no doubt. But still, according to their outlook, a reform convert is not Jewish, and a conservative convert is not Jewish. And the Jewish Agency is the agency that oversees the eligibility for Aliyah process. And we hear that and we could feel how the discourse is being changed. Now, it was never a part of the Zionist discourse. We were always the widest tent possible. And now it is changed. Furthermore, if you analyze the elections of 2020, you see that 40% of the slates represent orthodoxy. So 40% of the power of North American Jewry is as if it is orthodox, and we know that according to all statistics, only 10% of the US Jewry is orthodox. So something went so wrong here. You know, we are the blame, okay? I'm taking the responsibility for that. We didn't vote. We didn't vote. Conservative congregations in North America didn't vote. Reform congregations in North America didn't vote. We forgot that, like in every democratic campaign, not voting is actually voting. And this is what happened. And when it came to the $2 billion of Keren Kayemet Israel, the ramifications are dramatic. Today, I'm ashamed even to admit it. But from the biggest collective pot of money of the Jewish people, there are programs that are being funded that help yeshiva buchers, that have students at yeshivot, how to find ways not to serve in the army. Because they were elected democratically. They have now and things that really are dramatic here. And in these elections now, it's not only one Haredi slate that is running, there are 4. And it's not only in North America, it's also in Latin America and in Europe. So we have the numbers to make sure that we will be fine. Okay, we just need to make sure that our people vote. Otherwise, there is a serious fear that we will be experiencing a hostile takeover on what Zionism is. Now, we have the numbers. There are 900,000 Jews in North America that are affiliated with either conservative congregations, organizations, Ramah camps, etc. 900,000 people. We have the numbers to do a drama. We need to make sure that this time we bring enough people. Last time we got 15,000 votes. This time, we already know, entering the synagogue, I got a phone call from the executive director of the American Zionist Movement, and he updated me that up until this morning, 108,000 people in North America voted. And we are only 2.5 weeks after the beginning of the elections. We have 4 more to go. And it's almost the number that we had, in previous round at the end. It means that numbers are growing up. It means that we are will be reaching hundreds of thousands of votes this time from all slates, and we need to see that we are growing in a serious way, tripling or even quadrupling. There is such a word, quadrupling the numbers. It means that not only tonight we will be voting together, because democracy is a tool that once you do it jointly together, it's a reason for celebration. But also, and in a second I'll ask Daniel to explain how is the voting works. But also, from this moment on, what my plea to you is that you will be our ambassadors. Each and every one who sits here has at least 10 to 12 people that with one phone call, he or she would do what you ask them for, because they appreciate you. And we learned that it's not a media campaign and not on Facebook and not whatever. It's a simple request that from someone that you appreciate that would make you do something, especially when that something is 5 minutes and $5. And this is something that could change reality. Israel needs you. And Israel of October 8th needs the activism of Israelis and the activism of world Jewry in order to be proud of the Jewish and democratic state, the democratic and Jewish state that we promised generations to come. And yes, it's dramatic. And I must admit that me and my wife, there are nights that we hardly sleep because of the worry, both because of the war and the hostages and because our fear that the nature of the state of Israel might be changed. But Zionism taught us that optimism is a work plan. It's not only a mood, it's a work plan. This is the way to look at reality. And so many times in the Zionist history, we were in gloomy points and we prevailed. And this is one of them. I'm sure that we will be celebrating so many moments, but it needs to happen after we will have the courage and the understanding that activism is not something that anyone would do for you. This is something that we need to do for ourselves. Daniel, please guide us through the process.